Okay, so let us start with the new topic, which is transportation in human beings. So in this topic, what are we going to do is that we are first understanding the simple mechanism of how does actually the transport work, because before going in any long question or before writing the question step by step, we will first understand how is the mechanism working in this system. So what is oxygenated and deoxygenated blood? So here there is a word called D. D means deficiency, means the oxygenated blood will be having oxygen and the deoxygenated blood will not be having oxygen, means it will be deficient in the oxygen. So what happens in the blood is, let me show you a diagram of a blood. This is a blood vessel, and in this blood vessel we know there is a fluid called plasma, and in this plasma the cells are embedded. Means imagine that you take a glass in one hand and then you put water in it and then you put some small balls in it. So the water represent plasma and the balls represent the cells. Now these cells are of many types: RBC, WBC, platelets, etc. But here we are only talking about the red blood cells. Now these red blood cell in the blood will carry these oxygen molecules. So the blood is having oxygen, and this blood which has oxygen is called oxygenated blood. Now if the blood does not have oxygen, then it has another gas called carbon dioxide. So the blood which do not have oxygen and the blood which don't have oxygen and have carbon dioxide is called deoxygenated blood. So it's clear about the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood, that in a certain blood if there is more oxygen it is called oxygenated blood, and in a blood if there is more carbon dioxide it is called deoxygenated blood. So now if you have got the understanding about the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Now these two words will make the basic of the circulatory system, so it's very important to understand these two words. Now the blood rich in oxygen is called oxygenated blood, and the blood rich in carbon dioxide is called deoxygenated blood, which I will explain to you. So now what are we learning here is the mechanism of how the gases are transported, or how these gases are transported in our body. So now everybody is aware of the lungs in our body, and we also know that in our body the lungs are situated in the upper region. Means from here is maybe your head, then there are lungs, and then downwards there is the heart, or maybe you can say that the two lobes, these are two lungs, and the heart is between these two lungs. Or this is not kind of important to you, but you know that the lungs are here, two lobes, and there is the heart. Just to know the position of the lungs. So now coming back on our topic, this is the lungs. Now what does the lungs do? We all know in the breathing procedure we take in oxygen gas and we remove out carbon dioxide gas. That's a very simple understanding, that in the breathing procedure we take oxygen, and this oxygen, where does it go? This oxygen goes to the lungs, and the carbon dioxide which is removed out in the atmosphere is also removed from the lungs. Now what does this lungs will do of this oxygen gas which they have taken? So now we are drawing a heart here, a simple diagram of a heart. Imagine a cube like this, and in this cube there is a partition here and here. So it will make four chambers. Like in this room, if you where you are sitting, make two partitions, one like this and one like this, so it will make four chambers. So similarly in our heart there are four chambers. Now we are not naming the chambers now, we will name them later. Now we are just understanding the mechanism. It will be easier for you to write a short note if you have understood the mechanism. The names we will study later. So now the lungs has taken oxygen. During breathing the oxygen which we inhale comes to the lungs. Now what does the lungs do? From here a vessel, or you can say a tube goes, and this tube goes to this chamber of the heart. Now this oxygen is, now this is a simple mechanism, just understand this mechanism, after that it will be easier for you to write in short notes. So pay attention, this oxygen is put in this tube, the lungs put this oxygen in this tube, and this tube carries this oxygen to this chamber. Now what does this tube has? This tube has actually the blood, and this blood carries oxygen from lungs to this heart chamber. So this is called oxygenated blood. And why is it oxygenated? Because the lung put oxygen in this vessel. So simple to understand that in the breathing we inhale oxygen, this oxygen goes in lungs, and the lungs put this oxygen in this tube which goes in here in the chamber of this heart. Now we know that our body, there is a metabolic waste called carbon dioxide which needs to be removed out. That we know in the cells of our body, carbon dioxide is the metabolic waste in the body cells. Now how this carbon dioxide is going to be removed? So here you saw that the lungs put oxygen in this tube which goes to heart. In the same way, one tube goes from body to the another chamber. In this tube the body puts oxygen which goes in this chamber of this heart. So this blood which has it puts carbon dioxide because the body has generated carbon dioxide. So these body cells or body organs or anything, they put carbon dioxide in this tube, and this tube goes to this chamber of heart. Now if you notice that the lungs and body have sent this tube both in the upper chambers. Why? Because from here the blood will go in here, and these chambers are like pumping. Means in your household appliances you have seen that the pumps or the motor which pump the water from ground floor to the upper floor. So in the same way here, these two will act as pump, and the blood which is rich in oxygen will come in this chamber, and from here a tube goes which pumps this blood in the entire body. So again, what did we learn? That the lungs, they get oxygen from outside environment. When we breathe in oxygen. This oxygen goes in lung put this oxygen in a tube which goes to heart. This is the fourth chamber. Among this in this upper chamber this tube goes, and this tube, this is the blood. In this tube there is a blood rich in oxygen which is called oxygenated blood, and this oxygenated blood from this chamber goes to this chamber, and from here it is pumped to the body. And why it is pumped to the body? Because our body cell want oxygen, and they will remove out carbon dioxide. So this oxygen is transported here to all the organs. Means these body cells may represent liver, kidney, etc., stomach, etc. All these organs will get oxygen in this mechanism, and this body will utilize oxygen, body cells, and they will produce carbon dioxide. Now this carbon dioxide has to be thrown outside of our body into the environment. As we all know, in the breathing we take in oxygen and we remove carbon dioxide. So this carbon dioxide has to be excreted. Now the body cells, liver and stomach cannot excrete the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So what they do is that they send carbon dioxide in blood. Now this blood with carbon dioxide is deoxygenated blood, and this blood goes in heart, because the heart will pump this blood. This blood will come in this chamber, and we know the lower chamber can pump the blood, so it will push or pump the blood to the lungs, and the lung will throw the carbon dioxide out. So what we study is that the oxygen taken by the lung comes to the body, and the waste generated carbon dioxide goes here, and then it is pumped hard. This chamber, it pushes the blood, and in this blood there is carbon dioxide, so it is deoxygenated blood, and this blood is removed out from here and the lung outside in the atmosphere. So this was the mechanism, and then in the question and the long answer you will add that the right upper chamber of the heart, right? sorry, the left upper chamber of the heart receives oxygenated blood from the lungs. So this is all, you are not going to learn it. Now you know what is the actual mechanism. So now we are going to name these chambers. What is the actual name of these chambers? So the upper two chambers are called atria and the lower chambers are called ventricles. So the upper chambers are atria or atrium, you can call it anything, atrium, and the lower chambers are ventricles actually. So we can write this, these upper chambers are both atrium and the lower chambers are ventricle. Now one of this has to be right atrium, one of this has to be right, and one of this has to be left. Now which is right and which is left? See, this is my right hand and this is my left hand. So if you imagine like this, that the chamber which is here, this has to be right and this has to be left, then you are absolutely wrong, because this is not right chamber. It is when you are facing this book. Now imagine yourself sleeping on this book like this. So your right hand will come in this direction and the left hand will come in this direction. So the right hand of yours will come in this direction. Now you are facing this book, so that's why the right hand is here. But if you actually imagine yourself sleeping on the book facing upwards, means your face has to be upward, facing upward, then the right hand will be on this side. So what you can imagine is that it is the opposite of what it is. What it has to be, that the right side should come here, but it's opposite. The right is here and the left is here. So the upper two chambers were atria and the lower chambers were ventricle. Now this upper chamber is right atrium, this is left atrium, this is right ventricle, and this is left ventricle. Now if you don't imagine like this, or you cannot learn like this, then remember the word reel. We all are watching many reels. So reel, R comes first, L comes after. So make a box, right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle, done. If you can't imagine, learn like this. So this was naming of the chambers. So we can see here that this one will be right atrium and this one will be left atrium. These two are ventricles. Remember, upper chambers both are atrium and the lower chambers both are ventricle. So this is right ventricle and this is left ventricle. So now we named the chambers of the heart. Now what we are going to do is name these blood vessels. These are actually blood vessel which carries the blood. Okay, so we explained the name of the chambers of the heart. Now we are going to explain the blood vessels. So all this is diagram, it's confusing, so we are going to draw in next page. So what we drew was, here were lungs and these are the chambers of heart and this is the body. So we named that these one upper two chambers are atrium, and from the real trick we said that this is right atrium, this is atrium, and this is left atrium. Then the lower chambers are ventricle, this one is right and this one is left. So the first blood vessel from lung comes to right atrium. Now you have to remember some points. First one is anything pulmonary is related to lungs. So anything pulmonary is related to lungs. It means that this vessel is touching lungs, or this vessel, blood vessel, is coming from lung to this right atrium. So it will have pulmonary in its, this vessel from lungs comes to the left atrium, and if this vessel is coming from lung, then it has pulmonary in its name. Another thing that you need to remember is that away is artery and towards is vein. Now if you learn these three things, then we are going to name all these vessels based on this. Now away is artery. Now away and towards, this is respective to heart. means away from the heart or towards the heart, respective to heart. So this vessel, now this lungs is getting oxygenated blood from the environment, or okay, the lungs is getting oxygen from the environment. Now these lungs will put this oxygen in this blood vessel, and this blood vessel is going to go in the left atrium. Now this is going towards the heart, not away from the heart. If it's going towards the heart, it is called a vein, and it is related to lung, so it is called pulmonary. So now this vessel is called actually the pulmonary vein. Now this vessel goes from left ventricle to the body, and we know that ventricles pump blood, not atrium. Ventricles have higher muscular wall which pumps the blood. So this vessel is going away from the heart. You see, the blood is coming here, now it has to go to the body, so it is going away from the heart. So this is actually away is artery. And which artery? It is aorta. Aorta is basically related to the artery, and it carries deoxygenated blood. And from here, okay, so now we are going to start, we will trace the path of the blood only. So from body, this vessel is going to right atrium. Now this vessel is going towards heart. So towards, anything towards is vein. Where towards is vein. So this is vena cava. Now you see, in vena cava and aorta there is no pulmonary word, because all pulmonary is related to lungs. Anything pulmonary related to lungs, anything touching lungs will be pulmonary. And now from this left ventricle, we pump blood to the lungs, and the blood goes to the lungs. And now this is going away from the heart, so it is artery, and it is related to lungs, so it is pulmonary artery. So this is pulmonary vein towards heart, related to lungs, pulmonary vein. This is away from heart, this is artery, and related to lung, which is pulmonary artery. And this is away from heart, and away is artery which is aorta. No pulmonary in any vessel which goes to the body, only put pulmonary in the words which are related to lungs. And this is a vein which goes from body to towards heart. Towards heart is vein, which is a vena cava. Now this vena cava is vein, and this aorta is artery.